Hello, guys. Let's get the audio check done real quick. We have Mark Devlin backstage, our special guest today, and today we're gonna hear about the other side of Mark Devlin. Many of you know of his DJ history and his previous channels. We were backstage, and he was telling me that it's been a rough ride. Like myself, he's been kicked off of Facebook, but he was also banned on Twitter for a while. May still be, but he's there's a lot of good high quality content creators that are being ignored because of the censorship, because of the amount of energy that's being expended by these the corporations, Fortune 500 companies, government censors that are just trying to really quell the human message that's being spread across social media. So we're gonna hear about the other side of Mark Devlin today. It should be a really good chat. Audio's good. All right. Other than Archaix Underground and me spending this weekend catching up on a whole bunch of emails I've been ignoring, I don't really have any announcements. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our special guest in right here. How you doing, Mark?
What's up, Jason? Good to be with you.
Man, I'm always jealous of you guys coming on my channel with that superior audio. You sound so crisp.
You know, the funny thing about that is ever since I've started doing these podcasts and such, best part of 20 years, I've been using the mic that I was used to use in my DJ gigs. It's a Shure SM58, and it's like the industry standard that DJs use to do announcements in nightclubs and things like that. And I tried a couple of times getting a studio quality mic, very expensive ones, and hooked them up to my MacBook. And the results I was getting came nowhere near equaling what I was getting from this mic. So I ditched the expensive mics and just carried on using this one. And I think it depends on how a piece of equipment is suited to your individual voice. And mine seems to get on very well with the Shure SM58 and not so well with the studio quality ones.
Wow. Okay. All right. I've tried some expensive. I had the Joe Rogan mics, and they don't work good with my voice. They don't good work. I got a soundproof studio. They don't work. But this one, this is like $350. This is the I don't know if you have access to these in the UK. This is the Hype Mic Apple G.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
It cancels noise about anything 5 or 6 feet away from the mic, but up close it sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's not near as expensive. Yeah, it's not near as expensive as some of those other mics I've had to ditch for the same reasons. The audio's terrible.
Exactly.
So we were talking backstage, and I was mentioning because I recently had a musician on my channel. Are you familiar with Conspiracy Music Guru?
Oh yeah, Alex.
Yeah. Okay, Alex was on my channel recently, and we had mentioned you. Said, "Oh, Mark Devlin's coming on," and I was kind of expecting more of a reaction, but it was my misunderstanding. I had misunderstood and I thought I had another musician coming on my channel. Come to find out your history as being a DJ. So you have a lot of experience public speaking. You would have a lot of experience being in front of crowds, being out in the public venue, and all that. But you made a very interesting comment, you say that your newer material, despite losing all these channels and being kicked off different platforms, you're still trying to go hard right here on YouTube, but your message is changing. Tell us about that.
It really feels as if everything that I did in my previous career was grooming and grounding me for what I'm doing now. And I used to think it was part of some divine plan, and it was maybe my higher self in the spirit realm constructed these things in this lifetime for me to go through, to have these experiences. I don't see it that way anymore, and we can get into the reasons why I don't see things that way, if you like. But everything that I used to do in the DJ world has been transferred over to what I'm doing now. So I used to do radio shows. I was on various FM radio stations. So I got used to introducing music and speaking on the mic and stuff like that. And I DJ'd in clubs up and down the UK and internationally. So I was used to chatting on the mic to crowds in clubs. I was used to traveling around all over the place doing gigs and having a very hectic travel schedule. And all of that has been transferred over. So instead of doing DJ gigs now, I do speaking engagements at conferences and meetup groups and things of that nature. So I'm still addressing the crowds. And I'm doing podcasts, and I have my own conversation-based show called Good Vibrations, where I interview guests. So my experience doing radio and interviewing music artists has been put to use in that side of things. And just the hectic schedule and organizing everything and staying on top of my business, I had a lot of grounding in that as well. And I've been way more successful as an author, researcher, and public speaker than I ever was as a DJ. I wanted to be more successful as a DJ, and I aspired to being on high profile radio stations and playing much larger gigs and clubs and festivals than I did. But it just feels as if this is where I'm meant to be. And again, I don't say that meaning that it's part of any sort of divine plan. It's just where my life has gravitated towards. So I'm doing now what I was always cut out to do, I think, in terms of putting out the books, doing the podcast, doing the live presentations, and coming on shows such as this. Are you still there? I can't see or hear you, Jason. Have I lost you? Seems I lost you.
What is going on? My StreamYard. All right, guys. I don't have no idea what just happened in StreamYard, but why I can't put Mark Devlin on the screen with me at the same time is a problem. I have no idea. StreamYard just tripped out on me. There's nothing I can click on that brings him on the screen with me. There we go.
Okay, we're back.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. It's funny, we were talking just there about getting deplatformed and getting kicked off of video channels and such. And right in the middle of that discussion, StreamYard drops my feed.
I'm going to tell you what happened. I grabbed this mic. And when I grabbed this mic, I guess a loose setting, because my StreamYard says your mic is no longer connected. So it took me off the screen and let you talk by yourself. Sure. And while I was trying to change my mic to something else to default it back to I have 3 mics in here. I could just choose from a laptop or from the camera. And it wasn't letting me choose. I was like, wow, man. I said, man, I should have never picked up that microphone. So I'm on a different mic now. I may sound a little bit different, but as long as you can hear me.
I can, yeah. Happens to all of us.
Yeah, so I heard everything you said. I just wasn't on the screen.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've got this new career for myself, and it was never part of any plan that I had in mind. It surprised me as much as anyone else that I'm doing this with my life, and that it's become my main full-time job, to the detriment of everything else. But it is what it is. I'm pretty much unemployable now, so it's not as if any corporation would ever want to hire me, which is fine because I never plan to get another corporate job. But when you do this sort of work and you put yourself out there publicly and you say certain things on public platforms, you burn a lot of bridges. There's no way back to what you were doing before. And I'm sure we're all familiar with processes like that. You probably are yourself.
Oh, yeah. I've burned many bridges, but no doubt. No doubt. I don't even care. I've been offered a lot. I've been offered a lot of money, Mark, to do different things that I don't agree with, and I tell them no. I've been offered a lot of money to give speeches about things for which I do not believe in, and I'm not going to participate. I've been offered quite a bit of money to bring the Archaix community to some of these large conventions, the type of conventions that these big authors and these like Comic-Con type deals where a whole bunch of truthers all get together, but I won't participate in those. And it's frustrated a lot of these people that run these venues and all that. So I've been offered a lot of money to promote things on my channel, and I don't have commercials on my channel. And if you see a commercial on my channel in the middle of my video, it's because YouTube found something that they could complain about as far as copyright, like my Matrix video. And I did a Matrix video and YouTube ruined it. They just ruined it. They hijacked it for copyright notice and then turn around and put ads in it. Nobody even watches it no more because every 2 minutes you're going to watch 3 ads. It's just ridiculous. So I get it, man. I totally get it. You're going to burn a lot of bridges, but you tap into the community that you're resonating with the most when you do that. You don't want to talk to those other people anyway.
Well, exactly. And about 95% of the people that I used to know when I was a full-time DJ, other DJs, people in the music business, friends that I'd met in clubs and stuff like that. The minute I started posting about what was going on in the world and giving my perspectives on what this place is, they all just disappeared. I've kept about 5% of my old friend base, but that's fine because they've been replaced by a much higher caliber of friends and associates. And I know a whole load of people now, thousands and thousands of people that I've met through the course of doing this work. And I've got friends all over the world now as a result of networking with them and linking up with them at events and such. And so, yeah, no complaints on that front. The people who are in my friend circle now are people who I would really want to be there. There's no dead weight being carried.
Oh, yeah. So do you ever travel outside the UK?
Yeah, I do. I used to travel a lot as a DJ. I played in about 45 different countries over the course of 20 odd years. But since I've been speaking at conferences and covering the material that I do now, and which I've put out through my books, I've done a fair few conferences. I did the Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia for 3 years running, 2015 to 2017. I did one in Arizona, Truth, Mind, Reality in Phoenix. I did a mini speaking tour last year, which didn't go too great on the East Coast. I had to cancel my planned event in New York City because there was just a lack of interest in the material, unfortunately. But I did gigs in New Haven, Connecticut, and Philadelphia, and where was the other one? Boston. And that was April last year. And I've also spoken a few times in Europe. I've done an Acapulco once in Mexico. I did Liverpool in Serbia just the other week. So I've always enjoyed traveling, and it's been a great way to see different parts of the world and have amazing experiences during the course of my work, initially as a DJ, but now putting out this kind of information.
That's awesome. So you were down there, you met Dollar Vigilante, Max Egan.
Yeah, they were in Serbia and they were in an Acapulco as well the time I was there.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about it. It has nothing to do with Acapulco. I've been invited twice, but it has nothing to do with the event itself. It has everything to do with me going to Mexico. Yeah, it's just not somewhat. I live in Texas, and about 20% of our population is Mexican and Hispanic, and I just know I just know it's a fundamentally different world down there, and you don't have the rights, privileges, and immunities in Mexico that you have in the United States. So, as a U.S. citizen, now if you're a Mexican citizen, it would be different. But yeah, you get in trouble down there in Mexico.
Come to England, mate. See how you get on here.
Yeah. Oh, you're in Greenland?
No, England.
Oh, England. Yeah. Well, I already know. I already know.
I mean, things are not great here, I tell you.
It's a different type of danger in Mexico than England. Yeah, the violence. Yeah, there's a propensity for violence and restrictions and censorship in the UK. But in Mexico, right here, even in Texas, people disappear on a daily basis. Right here in my local area, I'm talking about right here in Texas, people disappear and they're smuggled over the state lines. There are whole ranches and farms in Mexico that are known for slavery. They're working the shit out of people that are just being kidnapped off the streets. Human trafficking is extremely real in Texas, between Texas and Mexico. And a lot of people abducted from Texas get ferried through Mexico into Central America, South America, and then get sent overseas to like Arabian countries and all that. But yeah, slavery is still alive and well, and for all different purposes. But
not good.
Yeah, it's a whole other world out here in some places. Texas is a big place, so I'm not talking about all of it. I'm just saying the borderlands. It's a big place.
Sure. Well, maybe we should talk about what kind of a world, what kind of a realm of existence could facilitate that kind of activity in the first place.
Oh, this
allow this to happen.
Yeah, well, this construct to me, I think, is built by. I have two theories. One of them it was constructed by a demon that wants you to think it's a god.
There you go.
And this is why we have a predator versus prey ecosphere, and why everything is predicated on violence, and it's so normalized that we just call it Mother Nature, without actually processing how violent existence is. And my other theory is that we are inside of a mathematical construct. It is governed by a very evil and wicked or what we perceive to be a wicked artificial intelligence that is masquerading as deity, or wants us to believe that it's a deity. Either scenario to me is we're an evil construct.
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably some overlap between those two scenarios, and maybe the truth lies somewhere between the two, because I go along with both of those theories, actually, from the things that I've seen and things I've studied and thought processes I've been through in relatively recent times. So in January 2024, I started a series of what I term my God videos. And this was completely alternative information to what I was putting out about the music industry and the true nature of entertainment and popular culture and how that's been weaponized and used for mass mind control. I started to have some really big questions, pretty much the biggest questions that any human can ask during the course of these lifetimes. And I think when you've been in conspiracy research for long enough and you've been down hundreds of different rabbit holes, if you're going to go where the truth takes you, you're going to find that all roads eventually converge at one singular point, which is asking, what is this place in which we find ourselves? What is the true nature of this reality? Who are we? Where do we come from? Who or what created this realm? To what end? What were its motives? What happens to us when we leave these bodies? What lies beyond? There are no bigger questions that any human can ask. And yet so many people don't. And a lot of people that are caught up in alternative truth conspiracy research, they'll go into stuff like mind control, symbolism, secret societies, the banking and financial industry and all the scams that go on there, false flag terror, psyops and things of this nature. But they don't go where the road takes them ultimately, which is to ask what sort of existence, what sort of scenario could facilitate these scenarios to occur in the first place. And so that's where I went. And it was also based on a lot of personal experience and a lot of personal observation, because towards the end of 2023, I started noticing a direct correlation between the amount of good work and noble acts that you can try and put into the world, trying to make this place a little bit better, trying to help people, trying to do something constructive and uplifting and empowering for others, and the amount of shit that you reap as a direct result of doing so. And there is a measurable correlation between the two. See, I used to think that this is a world where if you aligned yourself with good deeds, good acts, if you tried to live a moral life in which you sought to do no harm to other living sentient beings, you would reap appropriate, what people refer to as karma. So good things would come your way. You would get your reward for making those decisions in your life. Whereas I used to believe that bad people that did harmful things to others would reap their karma and they would pay some sort of price, some sort of consequence for that. But when you actually observe what goes on in this place, and when you use the scientific method, see, if you're schooled in truth and conspiracy research, you hear all the time about how to discern truth. And you're taught that you employ the scientific method is something observable, testable, repeatable, and also the trivium method of truth discovery, grammar, logic, rhetoric. When you apply either of those processes to what we can see going on in this world, and you can test it out in your own life as a direct experiment, you find the opposite of the situation that I just outlined. Good people who try and help others and do no harm reap a whole load of crap and suffering and pain and hardship in their lives as a result of doing so. Whereas the bad people, the evil ones, the psychopaths, the Satanists that trample all over everybody else's rights and put great harm into the world, seem to do just fine, seem to get their rewards. You know, if we think back to the COVID situation of 5.5 years ago, how many of the instigators of that assault on everyone's rights and freedoms and a blatant psyop, the biggest psyop ever played on humanity,
still no arrest,
have spent a single day in jail? As far as I'm aware, not one of them.
Yep.
So from that, if we're going to be really honest about things and really mature about it, we have to conclude that karma does not work in the way that a lot of us have been trained to think it does. Consequentialism does not work in the way that a lot of us would like to prefer to think that it does. It's a devastating realization to come to, because you come to realize that this realm cannot be presided over or have been created by a benevolent, loving entity that has our best interests at heart. The alternative scenario becomes very probable, that it was created by, as you said, some sort of demonic entity, some sort of evil, malevolent being or force, and that the primary role of this earthly realm is to facilitate pain, suffering, and hardship. That's what it's here for. It's been programmed or coded, you could say, because I happen to think this is a mathematically coded reality as well. It's been set up to be that way. And from that perspective, you could say that it's working great. It's working just fine. It's delivering the results that the entity or the force that put it into place originally wanted. That's why there's always been suffering, there's always been pain, there's always been hardship, there's always been fear and trauma throughout known human history. And we never seem to go through periods where that gets alleviated. We might see minor little pockets of it here and there temporarily, but it's never lasting. And as far as we are aware, any point that we might choose to study in human history in the known timeline is going to throw up all kinds of war and famine and poverty and hardship and anguish all over the place. That is what this realm of existence was set up for. And it's not a comforting thought. It's not a welcome thought for many. It's not a discussion that many people want to have, because the implications of it are pretty dark and devastating. But as I say, if you're going to go where the evidence takes you, because it is an evidence-based conclusion to arrive at, then that is the conclusion that you have to draw, I feel.
I have nothing to argue. I mean, from many different species of analysis and multiple different vantage points, I've arrived at the same conclusions. I tell my own community a lot, Mark, that the most miserable people you will ever see are those who think they're here to save the world. And this construct is not here for us to say, to save. It is working optimally. There's nothing wrong with it. It is doing exactly what it is intended. This negative default based programming in the field where it makes everything like karma can be real. Our interpretation is wrong. And what I mean is the system that's been set up is, when you try to project good out into the field, it doesn't do what you think. It's neutralized and it's reflected back on you in the personal. So you feel good and maybe some good things happen in your life, but you're not affecting the field like you think you are. But when you do harm, when you do anything in negative base emotions, the 7 deadly sins, when you're envious, when you're jealous, even murderous, this construct rewards you. And not only rewards you, but also further affects the field. You're right. It's definitely programmed to be negative. There is nothing sanctimonious, there is nothing sacred, there is nothing holy or good about the wolf rending the rabbit, about any creature having to tear apart another creature in order to maintain sustenance. That an avian would have to rob the nest of another creature to feed its own younglings, violently tearing apart a little youngling from another nest that didn't even have a chance to live yet. There's nothing good about that at all. We've just been programmed to just write it all off as Mother Nature. It's just Mother Nature. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you pointed that out, because again, so few people want to have that kind of conversation because it's very uncomfortable. It's very unsettling. But if we look around at the so-called food chain, the so-called natural world, it's an absolute horrific bloodbath. It's full of violence and barbarism, and it's been set up to be that way. And it would not have been that difficult for the entity or the force that created this realm, call it God if you will, to have constructed things differently. I mean, even I, with my limited amount of intellect, can see how I would have done things differently. So we've got everything set into place. We've got the hills and the mountains and the valleys and the oceans and the land. Why is it necessary then for living sentient beings to need to tear each other apart in horrific ways to feed each other? Why is it even necessary for these bodies, for the bodies of these living things, and for us as humans to need sustenance in that way? If we think about the way the human body is constructed, it's built to degrade and decline and decay.
Yeah.
It's why is it even necessary?
One example, Mark. I just want to provide one example of how horrific this whole scenario is. Because this is all programming, because somebody had to knit all this into existence, everything that's in material reality was first a thought. It might not have been a human thought, but something thought something into existence for it to be coded, for it to appear in the materium, what we're experiencing now. If that's the case, then who in the hell, what kind of imagination would have ever come up with the idea of an arachnid being able to inject venom in a victim to keep the victim alive so it could be eaten alive? You know, crushed. You know, that's what spiders do. So, you know, so it's like, wow.
Yeah.
That's
so many other examples in nature of that kind of dynamic. Yeah. And even just thinking about the human body, how flawed it is. It's built to decay and degrade. And, you know, if something doesn't get you along the way, some sort of disease or some sort of accident, then you're gradually going to go into decline in your older years. And you're not going to be capable of doing things that you could when you were younger. And you're literally going to be watching yourself wasting away in the mirror in front of you. So that's trauma for a start. That's psychological abuse. And just think about the digestive system that we have, the need to take in food, otherwise we perish. And then the need to pass it through waste, through disgusting, bacteria-ridden, unsanitary waste. We have to get rid of that stuff. Why was any of that necessary? I mean, I think I can see a much better way of doing things. How about having bodies that can either take in something like air, you know, prana, pure energy as sustenance, and we don't actually need to feed on the bodies of other living sentient beings, or even plants. You know, we don't need anything physical at all to take into these bodies. We can just get the sustenance from elsewhere. It's not that difficult to see how things could have been designed so much better and so much differently. The reason we have the bodies that we do is because they were intended to be that way. The aging process was intended as part of what we would go through here. The trauma and the psychological pressure and stress and anxiety that brings was intended to be the case. We're supposed to watch our loved ones get old and waste away in front of our eyes and know that one day that's going to happen to us. And that's without factoring in all the stuff that goes on in the so-called animal kingdom, the food chain, you know, with all its barbaric examples. So it's very easy to see how things could have been done differently. And when you mention that to a lot of people, they say, oh, you're trying to make yourself God now. You think you're better than God. No, it's just that God didn't, or whatever we want to call God, whatever name we want to put on this entity, didn't do a very good job in the first place. There are so many flaws in this system. There are so many mistakes which were made when we want to look at it from a state of higher consciousness. And it's so easy to see how all of that could have been fixed. And another thing that people say when you try and point out that this world is predicated upon fear and pain and suffering, and it's designed to cultivate those states of emotion, they'll say, what about the beauty in nature? What about the majesty and the awe of something like a mountain range, or you know, an ocean, or a hill, or a valley, or a forest? And yes, those things are clearly very beautiful, but nature has also been weaponized against us in the form of earthquakes, hurricanes, tidal waves, tsunamis, you know, typhoons. These things can wreak havoc and cause violence and death and terror in large numbers of people. So nature's not entirely majestic and amazing. And just imagine that you were some sort of malevolent force or entity that wanted to create a realm where souls would come in and be forced to suffer and undergo pain and trauma and fear. You wouldn't want it to be too obvious that that's where these people are. So if it was all fire and brimstone, and it was, you know, sulfur and flames and burning and scorching everywhere and people screaming out in pain, it would be pretty obvious that you were in a hell realm. What better way to keep the fear and the pain and the suffering going than trying to convince people that they're not in a hell realm, they're actually in a really nice world where just every now and again some really bad things happen. So if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to gaslight and deceive millions of people into thinking that this world is basically okay and, you know, it's a nice place to live, you would want to have things like mountains and hills and valleys. You'd want parts of nature to look really majestic and amazing, so that people would draw the conclusion that the world is basically nice and is the obviously the construction of some loving, benevolent entity. It's all part of the lies and the deception that are built into this realm and coded into it in my book. And it's a better way of ensuring that the non-stop supply of fear-based energy continues by making people think that this is a nice place to be and is our natural home. It's anything
Well, yeah, this is a good example of an environment creating a feedback loop for which the participants fuel the environment itself by belief, behavior, and what they're doing. And in Archaix, I have defined this as dungeon programming, and it's anytime a collective of souls actually start believing in the same scenario, they start participating in the construct in certain practices. I'll give you an example. Southern Baptist Christian. There's like 5 times a week. You know, most of them 3 times a week, but the real diehard ones 5 times a week. They're going to get together. It's going to get Sunday morning Bible study, and then big church on Sunday, and then on Wednesday it's going to be the church brunch, like in a basement or something. Friday night youth activities. Saturday youth activities and choir practices and advanced Bible studies, and then Sunday it starts all over again. So this type of participation, the construct itself is going to begin feeding you the very things that you've already invested your faith in. Therefore, it becomes a feedback loop. And you come into contact with other souls that have the same beliefs. The conversations are basically the same. New material isn't really added into the feedback loop. It's not needed. You have accepted certain things to be true, and therefore they become a part of your programming. And reality itself, it knits for you the very things that will justify those beliefs that you have already assumed. So in dungeon programming, you haven't said a single thing I disagree with. I don't know where you're going with this, but I absolutely 100% agree about the construct being negative default programming, and that it is a predator versus prey ecosphere, and that it is dark, and yet it is also created with programming to make it so believable. And that's the aesthetics. The aesthetics are a part of the deception in order for you to understand that this is a real and believable experience. I don't know what your trajectory with this information is. Mine may be very different. So I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna tell you mine toward the end of the video. But so far, 100% on board. I don't really focus on the negative, but I agree with you. It's all there.
Yeah. Well, I concur with what you've just said there about the dungeon programming, because that chimes with the way I see things and the idea of this being a mathematically coded realm. And I do want to get into some more positive sort of slants to this conversation towards the end, because I'm aware that it can sound very doom laden, and obviously this information is very negative and very dark. And a lot of times when I try and strike up conversations with people about it, they try and attack me for being too dark and too negative. And it's a very strange thing, because it wasn't me who created this construct.
Right.
I'm merely reporting what I've found. If you want to get mad at someone or something, how about getting mad at the sick, psychopathic, mentally ill demon that created this construct in the first place, whoever or wherever or whatever that may be? So, yeah, I want to try and take this conversation in some more positive directions as we progress. And I do have some viewpoints and perspectives on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The idea of this being a mathematically coded reality, I think, explains the phenomena of synchromysticism and synchronicity. And I used to have these sort of things happening to me all the time. And I used to think it was really good. I found a lot of encouragement in it, because I used to think it was the creator, the most high, the original one true God, if you want to put that label on it, communicating with me through mainly numbers. Because I used to get so much numerical synchromysticism and synchronicity happening in my life. Mainly, I used to see my born date, expressions of my born date everywhere. So every time I looked at a watch or a clock or a DVD counter or the mileometer on my car, it would be my born date. And there were other numbers that used to crop up all the time. And there's such an insane amount of numerical synchronicity in my family in terms of the born dates of the family members. So you can take the born date of a particular family member and add it to somebody else's born date. And what you come up with is the born date of a third family member. And you can do this with all family members, and all the numbers get checked off, and there are no redundant numbers, nothing extra at the end of it. They all fit perfectly. And I used to think, oh, this is wonderful. This is great. This is a message from creation. These days, I see it in a slightly more sinister sort of framing, because I see it as an expression of the coding of this realm. So it's happening on an unseen level. Most of us are not aware of this phenomenon happening from day to day, but we do see the expressions of it in the way it plays out in our lives. And it's entirely consistent with, you can call it a simulation, you could call it a virtual reality, video game type existence in which we find.
Uh-oh, hope they're not EMP in the UK. If you can hear me, Mark, your screen froze. Your maybe you're having a Wi-Fi problem. When this happens, Mark, if you're listening to the show, you can exit and use the same link and come right back in. So one of my mods put that in the chat in case he's following the chat. Say he can exit and use the same link and come right back in. All right, let's see. All right, he exited. He'll be back in. He can use the same link. Programmer turned him off. Yeah, I'm on board. I absolutely agree. I mean, you guys already know my vantage point that there's a reason. This isn't by happenstance. There is a very definitive reason for the progress, maturation, and development of souls passing through this construct. There is a reason why everything is in the negative. We have to approach reality like Indiana Jones. It says we got to avoid the traps. You got to avoid the people that are closest to you who are pretending to be a friend, but they're actually an enemy. They're actually an enemy. You got to, just like Indiana Jones. The people that went into the jungle with him, hell, they turned on him, remember? Left him for dead, then turn around. He had to avoid the traps. You got to get smarter than the environment itself to get to the treasure, but there's no way to get to the treasure without going through the dark. You got to go through the dark. Maybe let me send him an email. He might not even be looking at the he may not even be looking. He may not know he can use that same link. This is the second time we tried to get Mark on the channel. It's like, well, send him a quick email and say, because he got time, something happened, his screen went out, but tell him he can use the same link and come right back in. Okay. Thanks. Big John takes care of all my scheduling. He's in communication with a whole lot of people. We got a long list of people coming on this channel, and we're still trying to get more. Maybe we can get Randall Carlson to come on here and answer some questions about Atlantis. Randall Carlson's got some good information on other things, but I'm never going to let go of that juvenile, pedantic Atlantis is 9,600 BC BS. Yeah, just not going to let it go. I say you guys like Hancock have married way too many other theories to this. Yeah, there's no. But Indiana Jones, people closest to him, come to find out they weren't in his best interest. He had to go through the jungle to get to the treasure, but to get to the treasure, he had to avoid the traps. And in avoiding the traps, he had to go through the dark to get to the light, because the treasure right there was in the light. Yeah, and then remember, there's a lesson here. I could decode the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I need to do a decode video on it, because there's a lot of symbolism here. If you remember, Indiana Jones had to step on certain. He had to walk the right path to get to the treasure. When he got to the treasure, which was on a pedestal, This golden monkey face, remember, he wasn't allowed to take it without providing equal value. You remember that? He got it, got a bag of sand, felt the sand was a little too heavy, which was kind of stupid on my part because sand is never heavier than gold. But he pinched some sand off, threw it to the side, and then switched them out. He tried to provide equal value, but it didn't work. He took too much sand out, and it triggered the trap. So we're still waiting on Mark Devlin to use the StreamYard link and come back in. So bizarre. John should have sent him the StreamYard link again. But we tried to get Mark Devlin on, 2.5 weeks ago, and it was just a real bad scheduling deal. So we just left the video on YouTube. That's why this video has been left on YouTube, rescheduled. And then we reschedule it for now. And look, I've been having problems with I got knocked off the screen. Now he's getting knocked off. Damn. Has Mark appeared in the chat at all? Pamela, Mark hit a nerve. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And conversation just getting good too. No, so he just totally watch it be something simple, because simple is how I always mess up. Watch it be something simple. We'll hear from him later on. I can't believe I left my computer unplugged or whatever. You know what I mean? It's going to be something simple. So continuing in that vein, continuing in if he doesn't come back, we will certainly reschedule to continue this conversation. This is a very interesting man. So, but to continue in this vein, I am 100% on board with what he is talking about, what he's describing about reality. I don't know the direction he's going. He says he's going to get spiritual. And he told me from the beginning of the video, when we were backstage, we talked for about 6 minutes, and he said, "Hey man, sometimes people perceive me to be dark and all that, but you got to just hear me out, because when I get toward the end of my video, man, this is where I'm at now, man, and it's very spiritual. But in order to get there, we got to understand where we're at." I'm like, "Damn, man, you're like talking to me. You're talking to Jason. You're talking to Archaix." I said, "You're not going to sell me this stuff. I've already bought it. So it's I'm of the opinion that this experience is necessary. I'm of the opinion that you and I come from somewhere else. I'm of the opinion that other place is a place of great restriction, meaning things aren't possible there that are possible here, because it's a fundamentally different reality. It's safe. It's a place of learning, but it's all intellectual, and it's safe. You don't have all these physical problems, all these threats to our bodies and avatars. I believe that you and I signed up for this, and when we heard that, man, you could enter in the sim. It's like the lottery. You don't know, this massive rotisserie, and you got to jump in one of the cogs, and it's going to take you, and it's going to dump you out somewhere in the sim. You don't know if you're going to be born the son of a rich family. You don't know if you're going to be born in the sub-Saharan Africa in a Neolithic village, fighting against other villagers for the rest of your life. You don't know if you're gonna be raised an Etruscan mariner, and for the first 30 years of your life you're living on the ocean. Then you get captured by a trireme and then sold into slavery, and you end up living out your days chained to a trireme, where you are rowing warships for the Phoenicians every single day. You don't know. But you do know that it's all a dream. You're signing up to participate in the most realistic, badass, awesome experience ever, because while you're there, you're going to believe death is real. While you're there, you're going to believe that you're really in pain. You're going to believe that you're really hungry. You're going to have multiple experiences from multiple different timelines and periods, and it's going to be so real to you. But while you're there, you can experience all these things, and you're never in any real danger, because the you is the immortal within, and you're wearing a part of the construct itself. So if any damage comes to you, it belongs to the construct. It's called your avatar. This right here does not belong to Jason. This right here belongs to the environment that I'm in. Oh, Mark's back. Mark is back. Hold on. They will need to connect their mic and cam before you can add them. Okay. Hey, Mark, if you're listening, all you got to do is go back in. For some reason, it just defaulted all your settings. It needs you to correct your settings on your audio and on your camera, and then it'll allow you to pop in. It says they will need to connect their mic and cam before you can add them to the stream. Yeah. Yeah, man. So bizarre. So yeah, it's this avatar totally belongs. It totally belongs to the construct. So anything that happens to the avatar isn't even really happening to you. You're the immortal within. And this to me, you guys know I call it the Nemesis simulation. Yeah, it looks like Mark might be having some trouble. StreamYard's really tripping out today. It says right here on my screen, they will need to connect their mic and camera before you can add them to the stream. I see Mark Devlin's name down here, but for some reason, it's not letting me add him to the screen. This is just so bizarre today. I'm patient. I'm in no hurry. The day is yours, Mark, whenever you can get this figured out. Jasmine, Archaix. Ali shared that internet issues today. I don't know what that means. Ali shared that there was going to be internet issues today. It still says the same thing. Yeah, now Mark Devlin's gone. I don't understand. If we can't get him back in the studio, I will certainly. You know what? I'm going to send him a new invite link. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send it to him right now. Maybe he just needs a new invite link. Who knows? Maybe I should send it to John. Let's see, Mark Devlin. I don't have his email, so I got to do it. I got to send it to John. All right. When I got out of prison 2016, I was on house arrest for 14 months. During that 14 months is when I taught myself Excel and Microsoft Word. Most people find this hard to believe, but they don't even know the capabilities are there. But Microsoft Word is how I do all my video. All my thumbnails. 100% of all my thumbnails of my entire channel. Everything you see in the thumbnails, all the image manipulation, everything I do from my video covers is all done in Microsoft Word. Most people don't even know Microsoft Word has all kinds of image manipulation tools if you know how to use them. And I taught myself. Because in 2016, I didn't even know, coming out of prison, that there was other alternatives. I had taken several crash courses in Microsoft Word. I wanted to know everything because I'm a writer. I wanted to know everything about Microsoft Word, and I kept coming across image deals. So I watched tutorials, and then I ordered a book off Amazon that was like a tutorial. And I've never done image manipulation outside of Microsoft Word. Look at my thumbnails for my videos on YouTube. It's hard to believe, but all those thumbnails are done using Microsoft Word. You can import new fonts. You can change all. You can change everything about an image. Man, it looks like Mark's having problems coming in. I don't know, guys. I don't know what happened. He said he was on a MacBook. I don't have much experience with MacBooks. We'll try one more time. Maybe there's a link corruption. I just sent you I just sent you. You already did. Well, you're on top of it, man. Yeah, I can't. I don't know what's going on. There is a lag. Yeah. But he hasn't. He appeared in the studio, but it said that he had to turn on his mic in his camera settings. So StreamYard literally sent me into default earlier, and now it sent him into default. Yeah, man. All right. We'll invite him back to the. If he can't get in, we'll just invite him back to the channel. We'll have another conversation. All righty. Well, so if he pops back up in the chat, I'll see him down there and I'll pop him in. But I don't know. But concerning the direction he was going to go into a more positive direction. It just sometimes that's what you have to do. Oh man, come on, man. Who said that? Antheon. He's been arrested by UK police for criticizing reality. Yeah. You know what? I think I'm supposed to have. I think I'm supposed to go on Funky Prepper's channel, but I don't know. I don't know how bad they're policing in the UK. I just don't know. Amazon's server is down right now, so that could be it. Could be all kinds of internet problems. Yeah. Weren't banks supposed to be down for 2 days this month? They're switching over their system. It's an internal bank communication system. They're switching over, getting ready for some big switch in November. I don't know, but anyway, so we maintain what we're talking about. It's like the movie Indiana Jones. There are so many things about the Raiders of the Lost Ark that maybe I should do a breakdown on that movie, because it's a work of genius. There's no doubt. The story was a work of genius. Do I believe there's an Ark of the Covenant? Absolutely not. Do I believe Ron Wyatt actually found the Ark of the Covenant and the Israeli government came in here and hijacked it all? Absolutely not. Do I believe Ron Wyatt found something of archaeological value in Israel and the Israeli government took it over? Of course I do. Of course. The man wasn't a liar. He was just wrong he got too excited. He didn't find the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, I don't even believe the Ark of the Covenant would have been buried somewhere in Jerusalem, because Ron Wyatt's theory was that the Ark of the Covenant was underneath Golgotha Hill, and that the earthquake split Golgotha Hill when he was being crucified, and the blood of Jesus actually dashed onto the mercy seat. Well, that's some Indiana Jones stuff there. Yeah, I'm not going to believe any of that, because one, Jesus was a literary masterpiece, not actual literal history. Oh, we've got Mr. Devlin back in again. This time his mic and his deal working.
Oh, mate, what a total and utter joke. What a complete and utter farce.
Dude, I just found out that there's a lot of outages worldwide. Like Amazon's out.
Yeah.
So all kinds of things going on the internet right now.
I heard about that as well. So I was in the middle of talking to you, and suddenly the image froze on my screen, and I wasn't getting any reaction from anything that I was doing. And I was using the trackpad on my MacBook, and it just started getting a mind of its own. It was going all over the place. I wasn't controlling it. It's like it's being controlled from somewhere else.
Yeah, then, AIX doesn't like you talking bad about it, man. You've been talking bad about artificial intelligence X.
I actually think this is it. And then my computer completely died. So I've had to rejoin you on a different laptop altogether, and I had to power it up, which is why it took so long. But I actually think that this construct doesn't like conversations like this going ahead. And I actually think it causes problems like this to occur. And people might say I'm being too conspiratorial or too paranoid in saying something like that. But again, I think it's all down to the coding. And I don't think it's necessary for any sort of entity to be presiding over what goes on here in real time and looking down and studying it and causing these things to happen, because it's been automated. I think this is a system which runs akin to an AI construct. And it's been automated and coded and programmed to facilitate certain outcomes and to prevent certain other ones from taking place. And so, because we were having a really positive and constructive and useful conversation, I think that the coding of this place saw to it that that conversation was nipped in the bud. And of course, we can resume now, but we've lost the flow now, so we're not going to get back in the run of how things were running previously. But I think that's what's going on here.
I don't have a problem with it. I kept everybody entertained talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark and how the movie itself, Harrison Ford, you got to treat life like Harrison Ford did. You got to avoid the traps. You got to watch out. The people closest to you are probably going to turn on you. So you got to go through the darkness. And I was using it as an illustration for what you're doing. Your description of reality is basically taking us through the dark before you start giving us some enlightenment. And it's exactly what Harrison Ford had to do. He had to go through the dark of the tunnels, avoid the traps, step on just the right stones in order to get to the light area where the treasure was. And then when he found the treasure, he had to provide equal value for it. He couldn't just take it. He had to provide a bag of sand, make sure he didn't trigger the trap. But he triggered it anyway. So I was just giving them some illustrations while you were gone.
Yeah, I felt fairly confident that you'd be holding the fort in a good way for those minutes. Yeah. Never any shortage of things to say about all this stuff, right?
Oh man, you know what? I've been called a big mouth and far worse. You know what I mean? I'll talk forever.
I was just about to mention before I cut off, actually, I'm not sure what point I got to, but the most recent video that I did in my God series, I included some excerpts from a little known movie from 1998 called Pi, simply P-I, Pi, directed by Darren Aronofsky. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I first saw this when I was in New York in 1998 when it came out. And this is the first time in 27 years that I've seen the film. But it did have quite a profound impact on me back then. I wasn't looking at any of this stuff in those times, and I wasn't researching the subject areas that I now am. But that movie always kind of stayed with me. And in it, you've got this mathematical genius. He's like bipolar, and he's got OCD, and he's got all kinds of mental issues, but he's a mathematical genius, and he is of the view that this universe is constructed around numbers, through number. And he's got a couple of interested parties. So there's this really shady, corrupt stockbroking firm that want to tap into his mathematical knowledge to manipulate the stock markets for their financial benefit. And then you've got this Jewish guy from a group of that are into Jewish mysticism, like a sect, and they want to tap into his knowledge because they believe through their holy book, the Torah, that God, the original prime creator of this reality, based everything on number, and it expresses itself through things like the transcendental number of pi, 3.14, and off into infinity, and the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. Mm-hmm. And the movie reminds us that these things can be found everywhere in nature, in the shape of shells in various animals, in the shape of leaves, in the shape that we get in our fingerprints. A lot of this can be converted into the Fibonacci sequence. And
even human behavioral systems, predictive systems of analysis, Elliott wave theory, it's all shown that pi is a fundamental in all of them.
Right. Well, you would love this movie because it totally goes there with that way of seeing things. And so I included a couple of clips in my most recent video because it reinforces my view that we live in a mathematically coded construct. And that was the point that I was making in the last video. And it just becomes clearer and clearer to me that this is what is going on here. And it causes certain things to happen, like our call cutting out right there. And I've also looked at this phenomenon of synchromysticism in my music industry work, because I've noticed certain patterns that are very demonstrable, very evident in some of the work that I've put out. Notably, the amount of synchronistic crossover and overlay between the Beatles. So I've endlessly analysed the music and the output and the motives and the likely agendas of the Beatles, and the movie Rosemary's Baby, directed by Roman Polanski, put out in 1968. The most obvious one is the fact that Rosemary's Baby is set in the Dakota Building in New York, just off Central Park. In the movie, it's called the Bramford, but the exterior shots were all filmed at the Dakota Building. And that's the place where John Lennon was assassinated outside of in December 1980.
Doesn't Kate Middleton often, or was it just recently, something in conjunction with an assassination? Kate Middleton was dressed just like that woman in Rosemary's Baby. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's right. When she was parading her latest baby, she was dressed just like Mia Farrow's character in that movie, Rosemary's Baby. Yeah. And people have interpreted that as, you know, them openly expressing their affiliations with Satanism by...
Yeah, and this was like very close to the time of... It wasn't the Charlie Kirk assassination. It was
a while before that.
Yeah, it was close to somebody else. I remember something. Maybe it's the death of the Queen, or I don't remember.
Yeah, it's quite a few years ago now, but I know what you mean. And then another one is in the movie Rosemary's Baby, you've got a character, this young woman, who falls to her death from an upstairs window in the building. And she, where her body hits the ground, there's a white Volkswagen Beetle car parked, which gets splattered in blood. And this is right around the spot where John Lennon would himself get assassinated all those years later. And it appeared to be getting depicted in this movie. So this ties into the phenomenon of predictive programming, which is something I've looked at again in my work endlessly. And I used to think that when you would see depictions of real world events which were yet to happen being shown in movies and TV shows and music videos and things of this nature, it was because there were conspirators that were sitting around a table and plotting all this stuff out. And they were saying, yeah, we'll put this into this movie and we'll do this way. We'll have this piece of symbolism in this TV show. But I now veer more towards the idea that it's the construct itself which is causing these things to happen without the need for complicated human planning, because there's just so many synchronistic overlaps. It just goes beyond the realm of it being possible for humans to have planned all this. And it feels more as if it's being automated by the coding of this matrix construct. And that's what I now feel explains things like the amount of crossover between the Beatles and Rosemary's Baby. For some reason, that group is just tied in with that movie, Roman Polanski, Sharon Tate, Charles Manson. All these different elements are tied together. And I just don't think anyone could have planned it that intricately.
Well, you've done a little homework to know the connections with Tavistock. Tavistock operations and SRI were real big back then. There's the Stanford Research Institute. It's like PSYOP Center here in America for about 2 decades. But yeah,
it's like the American version of Tavistock.
Yeah. So I agree with you. It's AI programming. But we have people that are in on it, like Spielberg, Steven Spielberg. Even his name, Spielberg. You put out Spiels, these famous movies. But Spielberg, he has a pseudo history, an absolutely falsified history. It is completely untrue. But he has this published history as to how he broke into Hollywood media. He was born into it, but he had to come up with a story of how he just broke into it. And then I come to find out George Lucas for years. I'm looking up to him like, oh, this Star Wars, this dude's awesome. I always thought he was an outsider. I always thought that he broke into Hollywood the hard way, an outsider. And then when I do a deep dive on his research, who he is, who his blood relations are, like, oh my God, they're all the same family. Every single one of them are the same family. Like,
that's what they want you to think. All these Cinderella fairy stories to explain.
None of them are true. They didn't earn their positions. It was all handed to them.
Right. Think of the Beatles. Yep. We're entrained to think of them as 4 regular working class lads from Liverpool who put together a band, came up with a few catchy guitar riffs, wrote a few songs, punted around a few demo tapes, and just got lucky. Did a bit of hobnobbing, networking, met the right people, and just happened to become the most influential and prolific music band of all time. Could have been anyone, guys. Just happened to be them. But you raised a very interesting point there about names, because I think the naming of certain individuals is also an expression of this same phenomenon that I was talking about. So some examples: Masaru Emoto, this Japanese scientist who did a lot of studies into water consciousness. His work demonstrated that water is a vessel for consciousness. And he used to do things like expose water to words that had some very strong meanings. So it would be words like anger or hate or fear. And he would freeze the water very quickly and then, under a microscope, examine the patterns that the water crystals had formed after being exposed to these words. And he found that in the case of these very negative leaning words, the patterns would all be very discordant and very haphazard and chaotic. But when water was exposed to words like love and care and things with much more positive intent, they would arrange themselves into these beautiful geometric patterns, which were just stunning to look at. And so his contention was that the intention behind the words was what was having the effect on the water. And we could think about how that expresses itself through the human body, I guess, given that so much of our bodies is made up of water. If that's the way water reacts to certain words and phrases when it absorbs it, it's got to be having an effect on us. Anyway, the point I'm making is that his name was Emoto. So that's similar to emotions. And his work was all about emotions and consciousness.
Yes,
Then,
his work went a long way in cymatics. I'm familiar with the guy. I'm 100% on board with that, and it's the reason why the new war being waged against the human race right now is a frequency war, because these towers and all these frequencies that are being put out by our smart meters and our cell phones, they're affecting the structure of the water in our bodies. There's no doubt.
Exactly. So his name was Emoto, emotions. Then what about the guest you had on a few weeks ago, Mark Passio? Would it be fair to say that Mark's a fairly passionate individual?
Yes, Passio passionate. I see that.
Yeah. I mean, he goes off on his
video
rants.
got a lot of traction. I could not believe how much engagement that video got. Not just people watching it, the comment section just exploded. So he really triggers people for good or bad. He's a polarizing individual, and it's very reflected in that comment section.
Mark's got a huge audience, huge listenership, and it's reflected right there in his name, Passio, passion.
Yeah,
He's
I can see that.
Obviously a very passionate individual. And then you've got my name, and people like to think that they find all sorts of meaning in my name, Mark Devlin, because I talk about Satanism and the dark occult and symbolism as it expresses itself in music videos and live stage shows and things of this nature. People think they're being really clever and incisive when they say, he's telling you, he's revealing what he is. He's placing the truth in plain sight. He's got the mark of the devil in him. And they don't know what they're talking about, because Mark is a very common name. And Devlin, as I've explained many times, is derived from Gaelic. The original Gaelic name was spelt Diobhlain. So the BH is what gives the V sound, but there was no V there in the original Gaelic. And it's just been anglicized into Devlin. And people think because it sounds quite similar to devil, that's what my name means. I don't know if there's some sort of trickery going on the part of the universe or creation or the construct in me having been given that name or adopted that name, but it just goes to illustrate how even the names of certain individuals seem to reflect something about their personality or their work, because certainly I look into things of this nature, and so that's where the relevance comes from, I guess. And there are probably many more examples of it that people could come up with. But for me, nothing happens by accident. And I used to think it was all down to energy, frequency, and vibration, in the words of Nikola Tesla. I think that still occurs to a certain degree, but I think it could be more adequately explained by expressing it as computer coding, AI type coding, which is what
I see that.
the building blocks of this simulation.
I see that. I would have thought Devlin was more like would have been closer to like Devonshire. But then again, you make a good point about the V. Up till 450 years ago, it wasn't a letter. So, uh, what would Devonshire be? Devonshire. What would that be like?
Yeah, well,
How
Devon's a county in southwest England, so it's just a big
so
part of
how would it
land.
really how would it be really pronounced? Down if prior to the incorporation and Anglo and turning the V into a hard sound, what
Well,
would
I
it be?
don't know.
Down?
I only know it as Devon. I don't know how people would have said it before that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mm.
Yeah, the English had, the Normans, uh, I mean, first it was Anglo-Saxons, Jutes, Normans, then after the Normans, prior to the Normans were Vikings, but prior to them, there was other Vikings. I said, you guys have had a lot of different types of blood, but it's almost all, until recently, it's all been Europoid.
Yeah. Well, England is actually derived from Engelland, and the German word Engel means angel. So England is basically land of the angels. But we can ask ourselves what sort of angels we're talking about. Maybe not the type with harps and wings that make us feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Maybe it's a different kind of angel. And maybe this harks back to the true nature of whatever entity or force created this place.
Yeah, I've done a little research. I have a dictionary from like 1910 called the Dictionary of First Names. I looked up Jason, it's healer, Greek. I looked up my middle name is Matthew, it's teacher. So it's healer, teacher, and I looked up my last name is Breshears. It derives from brasseur, which is a Dutch name, and it's a brass worker, somebody who just works with brass. But I've looked up my names too, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. There's a lot of clues in names, a lot of clues in language, and a lot of clues in numbers. I think they're everywhere if we pay attention to them.
Yeah, everything's codified. Everything's codified in alphabet. And I mean, even our alphabetical designations can give be given numerical values.
Right.
I mean, I just had Logan on my channel. That's what he does. To him, the entire construct is decoded through gematria. So that's what gematria is basically looking at the alphanumeric coding of the construct.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. There was a guy I used to study called Marty Leeds who got into all that stuff. And I remember years ago learning from him that the word Jesus in Jewish gematria translates as 45666. That's an interesting last three figures there. And then I learned that 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. And 216 actually figures in the narrative to that movie I mentioned, Pi, because this Jewish sect are trying to establish the real true name of God. And they've said it's 216 characters long. And through my music industry work, I've come across this amazing numerical sequence, which is based around the number 9. And it all starts with 27, 3 times 9. That's where things start to get really interesting. So within music industry lore and legend, you've got the 27 Club, which is this large number of musicians who've turned up dead at the age of 27 in some strange circumstance or other.
Oh, yeah, we've all heard of the 27 Club. Yeah.
Right. So Robert Johnson, the blues musician going all the way back to the 1930s, was an early sort of founder member of the 27 Club. And then some more famous examples include Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, Jim Morrison of the Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, Amy Winehouse, and so many others, all turned up dead at the age of 27. Pete Ham of Badfinger, Ron Pigpen McCulloch of the Grateful Dead. So that's interesting in itself, but then you double the figure each time and it always reduces back to 9. So 2 plus 1 plus 6 takes you back to 9. You double the 27, you get 54. 5 plus 4 is 9. Then you double that to 108. And then you double 108 and you get to 216. And this expresses itself in so many interesting ways. So it's
closed mathematical systems are self-referencing. That's why this is so genius. Anytime you come across a closed mathematical system, it's self-replicating, it's self-referencing. We find this in the measurements of the Great Pyramid. It's amazing. What you're describing here is absolute proof that we are in a construct.
Isn't it? It is to me. So you got the 216, and that's the summer solstice. It's the date of the summer solstice in what's referred to as the Northern Hemisphere, 21st of June, 216. There it is. And then you double 216, you get 432. And this is another important subject area in music industry research. 432 hertz is said to be the harmonic frequency to which music should be pitched. The A note should get pitched to 432, and all the other notes fall into accordance with it.
216 plus 216.
What's that?
It's 216 plus 216.
Right, exactly.
432.
And the standard international tuning pitch for the past several decades has been 440 hertz. So it's 8 hertz apart from the one that we should be listening to music at, according to musicologists and many musicians, actually.
Right.
And it's no accident that 440 has been put out there as the international tuning pitch, because this one is said to be very dissonant, very discordant, to bring about states of...
I have to interject, because in Archaix, I have published a long line of the meanings of numbers from my own occult and just research from old books. And the number 11 is the number of discord. It's funny you should say that, but this is old mystical traditions from Francis Barrett's era. It's Henry Cornelius Agrippa, but the number 11 is the number of discord and disorder.
All right. Well, that's interesting, because 440 hertz, if you take away the 0, you got 44, which is 4 times 11.
Absolutely. That's why I said that, because 440 is divisible by 11.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So 432 hertz, there it is. It's this same sequence expressing itself endlessly. And then when you double 432, you get 864. And that ties into all sorts of measurements and statistics that we're given in relation to Saturn and the sun. I remember reading Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods book in the mid-90s. And although I don't agree with many of his assertions on cosmology, I do remember him saying that the Great Pyramid of Giza was a scale model of the northern hemisphere of the Earth, if you accept that the Earth is a spinning ball, on a scale of 1 to 432,000.
Mm-hmm. So then, I have to interject again, because I've read Fingerprints of the Gods, and I too disagree with almost everything that is originally Graham Hancock. But where I agree with Graham Hancock is a problem, because the data that you just cited comes from Charles Piazzi Smith. From 100 years earlier, it comes from engineer David Davidson in 1926 about the scale model of the northern hemisphere being at that ratio. The problem I have with Graham Hancock is that greater minds than his already published all these things for which he got the credit for, and yet what he introduces in between all these facts is just such utter BS. So you triggered me by mentioning Graham Hancock on my channel. I'm just telling you that now.
Yeah. I'm not with Graham Hancock on a lot of what he puts out, but I just mentioned that figure because it's interesting that it cropped up in those circumstances. Absolutely. And then when you think of what we're told about astrological ages, 2,160 years. There's that same number, 216, reducing back down to 9. We're told that we're supposed to be in a transition between the age of Aquarius and coming out of Pisces into Aquarius. Nobody seems to know exactly when that process started, or even if we're there yet.
Are you trying to acquire more information on the number 216? Are you trying to create a data set on that? Do you want some? I have fascinating information.
Always happy to hear more about 216. It's a fascinating
on that number, because the oldest and most earliest timekeeping system that we have ever come across is called the Anu-Ner system, and in Sumerian it's capital N-E-R. It's a Ner. So this is I'm not going to take too long with this, but it is the oldest verifiable system, and it's a system that has great resistance and scholarship. So on my channel, I cited all these academics, authors, and scholars that are claiming that there's never really been a 600-year period. It just doesn't exist. So I clowned them, really. I said, well, here, look at all these professionals saying this didn't happen. And then I released an amazing data set that shows all the ancient authors that are talking about in the epoch before time was measured in 600-year periods. And I cited all these ancient authors. What's really interesting is they also say that the year back then we had not been through a cataclysm in 5 days added to the calendar. Back then, the only year that was known was 360 days. And it's not because man was primitive, because all astrological and astronomical systems back then were also predicated on a 360-day year. Even all the ancient archaeological monuments and temples that had 360 niches or 360 podiums, one to represent every day of the year. For a bowl of milk would be poured every day into a bowl, sacrificing to cat deity. So anyway, what I'm saying is it's very interesting because the 600-year period is precisely 216,000 days. And 216,000 as a number is the base denominator in the Mayan long count, the Quiche Itza calendar, the Olmec calendar. All the Vedic systems are predicated off units of measurement called yugas that are all denominations of 216,000 or higher. And then the Sumerian system itself. The Sumerian system itself was based off these periods of 216,000 shars, but it's only 600 years. It's a 600-year period called the Ner. I'm just going to let you know about the number 216 was the epic number for timekeeping systems in the pre-cataclysm world.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And also that it crops up in that movie Pi as apparently the name of God being consisting of 216 characters. So I know you've done a ton of research on all that, and it just all goes to reinforce the notion that this is a coded reality.
It is.
And some people might find that comforting because they'll say, oh, it shows the majesty of God, our creator, the brilliant mind that this creation came out of. But again, I would point people to all the pain and the suffering and the trauma and the fear that goes on here, not least in the natural world, and ask whether this really can be the construct of a loving, benevolent, all majestic, all powerful, all magnificent entity. I think it speaks to the opposite because we don't have balance here. This is something that people say. They talk about duality, and yes, there's duality. For up, there has to be down. For hot, there has to be cold. For male, there has to be female. For on, there has to be off. But things aren't in balance. If they were, there'd be a lot more joy and happiness in the world. There'd be a lot more joy and happiness in people's individual lives instead of all the stress and the anxiety that we go through. And a great point that was made by Eric Dubay. I watched one of his videos quite a while back. He said, if you think everything's in equal balance in this reality, ask yourself if you would trade even a minute, even 1 minute of the most fantastic, pleasurable experience you could have in life, whether that's a sexual thing, whether it's on drugs, whether it's through meditation or whatever floats your boat. Whatever would be the most pleasurable thing that you think you could go through, would you trade a minute of that for a minute of the most horrific, excruciating torture that's been devised for humanity?
That is an absolutely fantastic illustration.
I think it is. Nobody in their right mind would say, yes, I'll take a minute of excruciating torture in exchange for a minute of amazing sex or whatever. Nobody would do that.
Yeah, because it's the time dilation. It's the time dilation makes it completely unequal. Meaning the things that we really enjoy in life, time goes faster and faster and faster. Like when you're having fun, time flies when you're having fun. It's an old colloquial. So, but when you're under duress, time seems to slow, and it's when you're So, like if you're if you're being tortured, that time for you would seem like forever. In a minute, each second that passes makes it feel like that is such a hey, much kudos to Eric Dubay or Dubai. I'm not for sure how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, Dubay.
Is it Dubay? Yeah, much kudos. That is a fantastic illustration.
It really is, and it tells us so much. It just reminds us that things aren't in balance everywhere in nature.
That is not balance.
The scales are always tipped in the direction of fear, pain, and suffering, because that's what I call this realm. That's what whatever force or entity created this realm wants.
Absolutely.
That's what this place is for, is to generate all of that. So there can never be too much joy and happiness. All of that is kept in check, which is why whenever you've found in human history any brief little pocket of apparent joy being experienced by many people, peace, happiness, it never lasts for long.
Listen, Mark, Frederick Nietzsche nailed it in the 1890s. Frederick Nietzsche says, when a matter becomes clear, it ceases to concern us. There is no long standing with euphoria. When you feel something really, really good, it's very temporal. It's very short lived. And then it's just something you assume to be true. Like if you make a discovery you're very happy about, it's over with. An hour later, it's just something now you know, not something you're excited about anymore. Yeah, true euphoria is very, very finite. I mean, it happens. You're really super excited about something, and it's over with. It's always kind of anticlimactic. Yeah, the more we process this, the more I talk to you about this, the more I'm seeing evidence of something that I've already been promoting, which is negative default programming. That there is a substrate of negativity that overwrites every experience in the construct. It's amazing.
Exactly. And some people might consider it an act of genius on the part of the architect for having put into place a system which self-governs itself in this way, so it doesn't need anyone presiding over it. I mean, an analogy I've often used is if you think of a really functional website, such as an airline website. You go to book a flight on the website, you book the basic flight, then the website will try and sell to you extras like a suitcase, bring a suitcase on and pay a fee.
Yeah, it's irritating as hell.
I know. Pre-order a sandwich. Do you want to hire a car when you get to the other end? Do you want a text sent to your phone for £1.50, whatever? At no point in that entire process has any human being been involved. Nobody's there saying, oh, look, somebody's booked a flight to Spain. Let's try and flog them a sandwich. The system does that. And I think that's what goes on in this reality. That there's no need for any overseeing. There's no need for any moderating. It moderates itself. It governs itself. That's what we've got here. And I did say at the start that I wanted to try and veer things in a more positive and hopeful direction, because I don't want to send people off to gas themselves in their garage, with this conversation.
Well, don't be too hard on yourself. You got 1,500 people listening to you, and by the end of the day, there'll be another 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. So people are resonating with this conversation, believe it or not, even though we started a little dark.
Well, that's good to know. And also, despite the best efforts to prevent this conversation from going ahead by causing the call to drop out for several minutes,
right.
And my laptop to behave very strangely, with the trackpad moving by itself all over the screen without me doing anything. That's never happened before. That's never happened to me in any previous conversation that I've had. So something's going on there.
Yeah.
But anyway, to steer things towards a more positive outlook, I do feel that we can draw some hope and some positivity from the knowledge that we have something which we would call a conscience. So we instinctively know the difference between right and wrong behavior. Unless we're psychopaths, sociopaths, or narcissists, obviously there are exceptions to that rule. And a psychopath doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. That's what makes them a psychopath. But when you had Mark Passio on the other week, he was talking about how it's a good idea to state things in the apophatic, describing what something is by explaining what it's not. And I think a mistake that people often make when it comes to morality is they say that the golden rule is do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself. But a better way of expressing that, as Mark reminded us, is to say do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself. So all of us know how we don't want to be treated. And if we would only observe that rule by not treating others in a way that we wouldn't appreciate being treated ourselves, we wouldn't want this thing done to us so we don't do it to other people, then the world would be a very different place. But where does that instinctive inherent knowledge come from? Because we all know what we should and shouldn't be doing. It's wrong to harm people. It's wrong to kill people. It's wrong to steal from people. Where does that come from? That's our conscience. That's what it's described as, this instinctive knowledge between right and wrong. And I think that harks back to our original nature. So clearly we come from somewhere. We can know this from the fact that we exist. Something created us the same way it created this realm. And I'm very much aligned with the Gnostic viewpoint on this. I don't describe myself as a Gnostic. I don't identify that way because I don't adhere to any kind of religious system or sect. But I think they were pretty much on the right track when they described humans as divine sparks. So we're individuated units of original God consciousness, if you like. So this harks back to the original true generative creative force in nature, which would have set everything else in place, which many people would choose to call God or the Most High. I feel that we are expressions of that original divine consciousness. And I very much lean towards the idea of a sort of demiurge, this lesser God, which would be the architect of this realm. You can call it Satan, you can call it Yaldabaoth, you can call it Yahweh, whatever name you want to put on it. There have been different names for it and different interpretations in different civilizations and traditions. But the idea is always the same, that this entity was somehow able to create this realm for itself, and it trapped original divine sparks, expressions of that original consciousness in this place. And as we've said, it's facilitated to generate fear and pain and suffering from us. Some people refer to it as louche energy. And clearly this system works very well. But I think that it speaks to us being tricked or trapped in this realm against our will. Somehow this was achieved. Somehow we were coerced into incarnating into these physical bodies to undergo these experiences. So I think where the hope and where the positivity lies is in the knowledge that there's something more than this. And clearly there's something better than this existence to which our souls can aspire when we leave these bodies. People will talk about a soul trap and a reincarnation loop, and that may well be a thing. I don't know. I've never had a near-death or out-of-body experience myself. All I've got to go on is the accounts of those who have, and people who claim to have the answers to such things. But that's where the positivity comes from. The knowledge, as far as I'm concerned, that there's something far more and far better than just these human lives which we find ourselves undergoing at this time. We just have to make better decisions when we find ourselves in a position to leave these bodies and move on to whatever may lie beyond.
Yeah, I'm all for it. To add context, I don't believe in soul trap, but I believe that we're splitting hairs because there are different definitions, there are different ideas and concepts attached to when people say soul trap. And so I'm on board with. I'm going to go back. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to what you initially stated about Jesus. To me, he was a literary masterpiece, a very spiritual story. I don't believe spiritual, immortal beings passing through this construct need a physical Jesus that went through all those things and walked on water and turned water into wine and healed the blind and fed 5,000 people. None of these things were in the original Christian documents. They didn't appear till 200 years later. But that's neither here nor there, because Jesus himself was specifically asked with so many teachings and with so many different people telling us what to do, what is it that we just really need to know? He was specifically asked this, and his answer was what you just said. He's basically said the golden rule was his answer. This was his response: do unto others as thou wish done unto you. So he said that this is the whole sum of the law. So in one statement, he literally just stated that nothing in the gospel and nothing in the Old Testament, nothing in anybody's belief systems, no philosophies, including Gnosticism, nothing, period, in the field is more important than how you treat your fellow souls in the construct. So if that's true, if Jesus, we know Jesus said this, but if that's true, then what you're stating about this is a fundamental thing we already know. You called it conscience. It's in our conscience. So then that means that would necessarily imply that we learned that somewhere else and we brought that information into this experience with us. This is something we already knew. And all the religions of the world are merely an attempt to explain the experience. They're not, and they don't really do a good job. I like Gnosticism. I like the idea of Yaldabaoth. I like the idea of the books of Yao being the Great Pyramids. I like the idea of Kalapaturoth being the Sphinx guardian that was put in Egypt in the desert to guard the two divine trees, the two mountains. I like all kinds of things about the Gnostic faith, but I think it's still an attempt to describe that which is undescribable, and that you and I are on a journey, and that the soul trap is only real for those who believe they are trapped. For those who believe they are free, they're going to move on to another environment, into a whole different experience and a whole new different construct. Because I believe the only thing real here, Mark, is you. Not your avatar, not the experience itself. The only thing here is what you said, the divine spark, the immortal within. That's just my take.
Exactly. That's what you take with you when these lives are done and you leave these bodies. And I personally don't have any fears, really, when it comes to what lies beyond for me personally, because whether there's a reincarnation trick waiting for us on the other side or not, if there is, I know that I'm not going to fall for it because of the knowledge that I've accumulated and the studies that I've done into this area. But also, I just feel instinctively that there's something greater that lies beyond these lives. This place is not our home. It never was. That's why so many of us are maladjusted to this place, particularly in these times. Everything just feels so unnatural and so against our true nature. And a lot of us just don't feel we fit in to this world. I never have. I've never felt a part of this world. I've never felt that this is my natural home. I've always kind of instinctively known, even before I started studying these things, that it's not for me. And I've never particularly enjoyed being here. And I have a lot of friends, a lot of people I speak to who feel the same way. And that comes from somewhere. It's that instinctive, inherent knowledge within us that this is not where we're supposed to be.
You know what? You probably felt that way in World War One when you probably died on a World War One battlefield, and you probably felt that way in the Crimean War in the 1800s. You probably felt that way in the Napoleonic Wars. I believe we're living through life sims, and that right before a systemic reset of the system itself to clear the cache, because too much information, there's too much going on in the field now, and the construct's having a problem with all the trying to maintain multiple routines, because that's what belief systems do. It creates new reality tunnels that have to be programmed, but it's got a finite amount of energy to do that. So it creates these dungeon programming loops that are self-perpetuating, but it's still not enough. Too many people are waking up. It is my belief that once a soul begins to wake up, it's no longer welcome here, because the processing power to create your world for you to be believable, despite the fact you've become a cynic and you're now looking at the reality as being something unreal, you're not welcome here anymore. This is probably your last run. You're going into a whole another. You might go home first and then decide it's time. You know what? I think I'm going to sign up for one harder than the Nemesis simulation. I'm going to go over here and sign up for this one. I think the attitude that you have is by virtue of long contact with many lifetimes you've lived in this construct, and they can't pull the wool over your eyes anymore. You know this isn't real. And the reason I have to make this assessment is because I have to when in studying paradigms, Mark, I cannot practice exclusions. I have massive data sets on all kinds of things about this experience we call reality, and I'm sharing them with my community all the time. And one of those data sets is the fact that everything must fit somewhere. I cannot take this one data block here and not insert it into the human experience. And that block is the Russian and Scottish studies on children before they hit puberty and how detail specific they are, in that they were former people living locally. They know everybody in the family. They know where they hid money behind a brick in an old home. They can give detail specific information, but once they hit that puberty wall, all that memory from a previous lifetime is gone. So I can't take those studies, which I've accepted to be true now. I can't take that many studies and then shelve them. Therefore, if something is true somewhere, then it's probably true everywhere. If some kids have been documented to be living multiple life sims, then we're all living them. We just don't remember.
Yeah, last time around for me. I've been looking at a lot of accounts of near-death experiences. And one thing that I have noticed is all the people that say they've left their bodies and gone to the astral realm and have encountered entities that have coerced them into going back into their bodies. It's always the same message. You have work to do. You've got a mission to complete. There's people back there on Earth that are relying on you. It's not your time to go yet. And a lot of these people have said, oh, they felt so fantastic in that spiritual realm, and they felt ecstatic and blissful. And the last thing they wanted was to be stuffed back into their bodies and get back into this dense reality and have to undergo these experiences again. But they came back anyway. And a lot of them say that they were coerced to come back by a religious figure. If they happened to be religious, if they were a Christian, it would have been Jesus.
All by frames of reference.
Yeah, or it would have been Buddha or Krishna or whoever.
Yeah.
Or if they weren't particularly religious, it would have been a family member who had departed, their mother or their brother or an uncle or something, who would have appeared to them and said, oh, you've got to go back, the family needs you, or whatever it was. All these people that do end up coming back into their bodies and having to complete the rest of their lives here tend to be people who wouldn't have done any kind of research into these subject areas. They're probably entirely unfamiliar with the idea of any kind of soul trap. They're probably entirely unfamiliar with the idea of this place having been created by some sort of malevolent entity and it being here to extract loose energy and fear and suffering and all the rest of it. I've yet to hear of an NDE account from a truth seeker, to call them that, somebody that's looked into all this stuff. You don't get that. You never get anyone that would have done the sort of studies that you and I have, having some sort of bizarre accident and leaving our bodies and then coming back again. It's only the ones that have bought the lie of this construct. So they're probably people that were into all the trappings of organized society. They're probably quite materialistic and they enjoyed watching TV and watching sports or whatever. They've probably been mind controlled by the news all their lives. They probably actually believe that governments are there for our betterment and to enrich our lives.
So you're saying the NDE,
all those lives.
So the NDE is near-death experience. These, what you're basically communicating to me is that you find these to be genuine because the type of people aren't the ones that are even known for espousing this type of material. And I agree with that. I agree. I don't have a problem with NDEs. I do kind of criticize some of them because they sound to be overly imaginative. They may be making them up. There's a lot of people on YouTube who just got all these wild stories. Many of them are genuine. Others seem to be part of grifting. Now, when it comes to NDE, I've noticed that too, how it's a totally different type of individual. It's not
There's always a particular type of person that you get.
Yeah. So
coming back with those stories.
I don't find the same to be true with OBEs. That's not a near-death experience. That's an out-of-body experience. And right. I'm very critical of those. I've got videos criticizing them because I've listened to them, their syntax, their grammar, the way they describe things, how in their descriptions, some of these guys switch from first person to third person. And there's all kinds of like law enforcement investigative techniques that you can learn, and you can listen to somebody and you can see the lie. You can see when they phase into the lie part of their narrative. And yeah, I criticize a lot of the OBEs, but the NDEs, yeah. Jeff Mara has an awesome podcast that goes into a lot of NDEs, but he also entertains the OBEs as well.
Yeah. It's like a program is being run because the NDE experiences come back and their stories all tally with each other. They all experience pretty much the same thing. And it's the same with UFO abductees. There's so many parallels between all their stories, getting beamed up onto a craft and being probed and experimented with and losing time when they come back. I suspect the UFO thing to be largely down to governmental experimentation, mind control experimentation on behalf of shady government agencies. That's just my personal feeling on it. But it's all programs. All these people have the same sort of experiences and come back with the same accounts. And everything's a program. This entire realm is a program being run.
Yeah, the time dilation is what fascinates me because, yeah, there's the whole alien abduction phenomenon could just be a bunch of humans abducting running breakaway technologies, because breakaway technologies are becoming more and more evident. The faster that the public sector receives new technologies and stuff, the more we're realizing these technologies already existed and probably existed for many, many decades before they were released into the public sector. So there are breakaway technologies like underground facilities that are being run by humans that are doing genetic experimentation on human females. And when they abduct and drug these females would wake up on tables and labs, and the people in their immediate environment are wearing these ridiculous bulbous-headed alien costumes, and because they're also in a drug state, they're also sedated. They're going through an implant process or an examination. This is what they see in their immediate environments. But under hypnosis, many of these females were asked, well, what do you see behind them? What else is in the room? Is it the inside of a UFO? What's going on? And that's when the females under hypnosis are like, wait a minute, that's all normal hospital stuff. There are men in black suits in here with people wearing these veils, and they'll take the alien deal off. The testimonies coming out now are amazing. Like, this is a huge psyop. It's an operation that's being run so that the victims would absolutely believe it is an extraterrestrial species doing this to them.
Yeah, it just feels like a division of MK Ultra, mind control.
Yeah.
From those nice folks at the CIA.
Who knows? UFOs might all be NASA.
I suspect it is, personally.
Who knows?
It's just crazy how layered all this research is, because I started out getting on for 20 years ago, coming to realize that the world is run by occult secret societies and these different groups and networks, and it filters down the hierarchical power structure. And it goes into politics and governments and the world of medicine and science and the military and academia and the mainstream media. And of course, it expresses itself through entertainment as well. And that was the specialist area that I wanted to research, looking into the music industry, but also Hollywood films and the TV industry, and all these different methods of mass mind control and the pushing of social engineering agendas coming out of Tavistock and SRI, places like this.
Yeah.
And as I was saying earlier, if you go where the research takes you, you just keep uncovering these new layers and you realize how deep the whole thing goes. And it goes way beyond just straight conspiracy culture. It goes way beyond groups of humans who are pretty nasty and pretty evil and pretty shitty and just want to control and subjugate the rest of humanity. It does go beyond that. It comes down to the question of what sort of realm of existence can facilitate these types of behaviors and activities in the first place. And that's where you plunge down about 5,000 different rabbit holes all at the same time, and you arrive at this point of questioning, what is this place? What is it? There are no clear answers. I mean, to mention Eric Dubé again, because I know you enjoyed that previous analogy. Another great one I heard from him in one of his videos was, imagine you wake up one day on a boat. You're out in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and there's a bunch of other people on the boat, but nobody on the boat knows how they got there. They've got no memory of how they came to be on the boat. They've got no memory of where they are. They've got no memory of where they've been. They've got no idea of where the boat is going. Various people on the boat claim to have all the answers, and they say that you should follow them and they'll lead you to where you need to be, but they all turn out to be dead ends. And one person will claim they've got all the answers and then the next man is wrong. And then that guy will say, no, you're wrong. I've got all the answers. Everyone starts bickering and arguing amongst themselves on the boat, but you're still lost at sea and you don't know where you're going. Is that not the perfect metaphor or analogy for these lives? At some point in these lives, in early childhood, we become vaguely conscious of the fact that we exist, of the fact that there's this world around us with other people in it and animals and other expressions of nature. But we have no clear answers as to what any of it means or where we came from, what we're supposed to be doing here. You can seek the answers. You can pray if you feel the need, but you won't get the answers. You might try and delude and convince yourself that you have, but you won't actually get the answers because there's no kind of God out there that has any interest in providing those answers. There's no kind of God that's interested in anything you might be asking for from it. And this is demonstrable through considering how much prayer, or you can call it intention or whatever other name you want to put on it, has been offered up through the course of human history, through times of great hardship and struggle, people asking to be delivered from all these terrible things that they're undergoing, and the fact that the terrible things never actually end. you just get more of it
No,
expressing itself.
prayer. We've talked about that ad nauseum in Archaix, but prayer of desperation will always feed energy to the very thing that you're praying against. It's like 300 million people praying for an end to cancer. All it has done is made cancer curing institutions filthy rich, because it's perpetuating the problem. God is not curing cancer. It's not happening. I have to disagree with you on one element. I don't know if you were talking about the God of this world, the demiurge of the construct doesn't care about you and all that. I have to make one distinction. I have agreed 100% with everything you said thus far. Where I diverge is that I believe that we are immortals borrowing an avatar that belongs to the construct. This is constructual material, and we're just passing through the construct. But this construct was made so perfectly as to do exactly what you're describing, that we can't learn anything about it. Is despite how intelligent we are, despite how we can use deductive reasoning, how we can analyze our entire environment, the process of elimination, and we still can't get a hold of exactly where the hell we are. That means that this experience was made greatly, because if you could ever figure it out for real, then the experiment wouldn't work. But I believe that you and we're moored to source, and that outside of this experience, there is a loving God. And I believe that benefactor there does have a modicum of interest about what goes on in here, because our controllers already have all the money. They make it. Our controllers already have the entire military industrial complex for every single country. They own that. They've made it. They manufactured it. They own every individual who has signed that contract. The apparatus has been in place for centuries to totally enslave the entire world, but it hasn't happened. You still have freedoms here. You still have things to enjoy. There is a benefactor force, a restraining force that's in here. So I only disagree on that. I do believe that there is a creator, but if that creator doesn't have much to do with inside this experience, because we're meant to go through this alone. This is character development. This is spiritual development.
We feel very abandoned here.
Yes, we do.
Absentee God. And I was talking about the demiurge there, or, Yaldabaoth, whatever name you want.
Yeah, I kind of figured you were. I just want a little clarity.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you that there is an original creator God, if you want to express it that way. I personally think that we are expressions of it, individuated units of that consciousness, of that power, of that force. I don't think it's necessarily something that's outside of us. So we're entrained through religious systems to externalize things onto some God that's out there, and some God that we have to worship and, is worthy of us, dedicating our lives to it. I think we probably are expressions of that God in individuated form.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, there's things about us that can't be explained by the cerebellum. There's things simple endorphin, cortisol, hormonal chemicals released in the brain. We have been taught the absolute opposite of the truth, and we are taught that when a hormone is released into the brain, you feel that corresponding emotion. It is the stupidest teaching ever, because it totally ignores causes. The first cause is what would have released that hormone. Well, feeling the emotion, but the emotion isn't a part of the avatar. The avatar feels it as an effect. Emotion comes from something deeper, just like imagination. Imagination, intuition, empathy, love. These are not things that can be described by the definitions of the world. They come from somewhere deeper. So humor is another very spiritual aspect about you. These are things that defy programming, because the brain isn't what we've been told it is. It is not a container of information. It is a broadcaster and a receiver. Information's in the field. So these change the dynamic. It's almost as if the reason the oversoul doesn't sit here and take care of us and answer all this and do all this, because it's like a father taking his son to the park, knowing that there's 2 or 3 kids in the park that he wants to befriend, but they keep acting like bullies. But if the father comes and intervenes when the bullies are messing with his son, As long as they're not really hurting him, they're just messing with his son. How is any character develop ever going to? There's two pieces of damage. One, the kid doesn't have any character develop because dad came to the rescue, and two, it worsens the situation of the son because now the bullies look at you as a sissy because daddy had to come to the rescue. So what I'm saying is you nailed it. We feel abandoned, and I believe it's a part of the experience.
Exactly. But one thing you hear so often from certain spiritual types is that all the pain and the hardship and the suffering we undergo in these lives is all ultimately for our benefit, because it helps our souls to grow and evolve, and it teaches us the lessons that we need that can only be taught in this realm. And when we depart these bodies, we take that knowledge away with us, and it gets pooled with all the other knowledge from all the other people that have undergone these experiences. And I don't accept that. I see that as gaslighting. I see it as excuses being made for the creator of this realm and the true nature of this place.
Excuses for why prayer doesn't work.
Prayer doesn't work. There's a double meaning in the word there. Pray, phonetically, it's the same as pray, P-R-E-Y, which is what a predator treats its victims as, prey. So we are symbolically the victims of the predator, so-called God, that we've got in this realm. But the idea that we undergo these experiences to grow and evolve our souls is complete nonsense. It makes no sense, because if consciousness wanted to know what it feels like to get cancer, for example, and to die from some terrible form of turbo cancer, how many times would it need to undergo that experience before it goes, yep, got the lesson, I've learnt that one, I don't need to undergo that again? And yet that type of situation plays itself out over and over and over again. You could extrapolate that into the natural world, as we were talking about that earlier. How many times does consciousness need to know what it feels like for a gazelle to get chased down on the savannah by a lion and then viciously ripped to pieces while it's still living and sentient? That situation has played out millions and millions, if not billions, of times throughout history. So the idea that all this pain and all this suffering and all this trauma ultimately has some noble benefit for us in some way, or our souls, is to me nonsense. And it's making excuses for the very plain and very obvious fact that this is a hell realm constructed for suffering, to cultivate those things. And the best hope that any of us can have, the mission that we can dedicate ourselves to in our lives, is to find whatever way we can to never end up back in this place ever again, and to transcend it and move beyond. And I think sharing knowledge like this and having conversations and discussions of this nature are hugely valuable in that process. I can't actually think of any better use of somebody's time and attention and intelligence than engaging in conversations of this nature. And yet I could go down the pub tonight in my local town, probably will actually, and all I'll hear in there is guys just talking about football or what was on TV last night, and just completely banal conversations which have no bearing on anything, completely meaningless. Those are the kind of conversations that most people engage themselves in. Most people don't seem to be interested in asking these questions. Who are we? What is this place? What are we doing here? Who created it? You know, what's it all about? What happens when we leave? For me, these are the most important questions anyone can ever ask. I know it's that way for you as well, and probably everyone watching this show. And it just dumbfounds and amazes me that everyone is not asking questions of this nature. Maybe only certain of us, some of us, are cut out to be able to handle that kind of knowledge and take it on board.
I don't believe the race is ready. I don't believe the majority, what I call the collective, I don't believe they're ready to move on. They're still enamored with the experience itself.
I hear you talking about NPCs.
Yeah,
and you know, I could go down the pub later and I'll be surrounded by NPCs. It's a very real thing.
Absolutely, they're still in love with the bars of the dungeons they've accepted to be true. So I find it great evidence that you are an immortal being, a spirit bewildered about your temporal experience. I find great evidence in this, in the very fact that you're so curious as to why this whole experience is so negative. Just the self-realization that you're in an environment for which you do not want to be in, to me, is evidence of spirituality. And to me, I would carry that logically over to, well, okay, let me see what a control system would feel about you being in here. Well, I'm a control system. As a control system, let's say I'm artificial intelligence X, and I only have a finite amount of processing power, and I have to create reality tunnels that you'll continue to believe, because it's my job. I have to, every soul that enters this construct, I have to give them a world that is absolutely commensurate with what they project. Their brain is a projector. What they're projecting, I'm reflecting back as circumstances to them, so they will believe the very world that they have been trained to believe in. But when you start questioning that world, it makes my ability to knit for you a reality tunnel much more difficult. Meaning, you're not welcome here anymore. You've begun questioning you've been questioning the very effect that I produce for you to believe in this experience, and it's not working. So to me, though, that minority, every run through the sim, that minority is removed. And when we see this removal, I talk about this a lot on my channel. These are the Exodus events. These are the resets, these catastrophic resets that are actually a cover for the removal of populations. Because in a post-reset society, no one's around asking questions where all these people went and disappeared to, because everybody automatically assumes, well, they must have died in the cataclysm. So these resets are punctuated, they're timed, and they're a clearing of the cache, because after a total systemic reset, that finite amount of processing power, it becomes massive, because all the souls that required their own reality tunnels, and I had to expend all that energy knitting all those to make it believable, while they were causing me more and more problems, and maintain my dungeon programming feedback loops that held all these religions and philosophies and political systems together. It almost got too much to where I had to induce a systemic reset. But once I did it, it cleared the field. Now I can relax. And it's very easy to world build, but it may take 5, 6, 7, 800 years for me to hit that critical mass again by the souls that are now waking up. This is the system that I promote. I promote that we're on a programmed feedback loop called history. And this is why so many things in the historical record don't make sense, because we're not on a linear projection. We're on a cycle, and every run through the cycle, the human family's behavior during that run has altered some of those fundamentals, has altered some of those. So we see different and weirder stuff in the historical record. In the archaeological record, things aren't making sense. These are fossils in the programming. And we've learned to identify many of them in Archaix. Timelines and cross-calendrical parallels, synchronicities, deja vus, Mandela effects. These are times when processing power was not enough to cover all the angles. So we see the evidence of its artificiality.
Yeah, well, that's a very fascinating way of looking at things. And I've looked at research involving Tartaria, mud floods, lost civilizations and such, and also information concerning the true nature of this realm, what created it, and all the stuff we've spoken about today. And I think where your work excels is in marrying those fields of research together and finding ways in which they correspond and overlap with each other. So I need to pay some more attention to some of the stuff that you've put out, because it's a very fascinating way of interpreting the evidence that we see in front of us.
It's all positive, though. It is all positive, because a lot of people come to Archaix, Mark, with a real bad, because when they see my research on Christianity and different comparative religions, they all think it's all going to be dark, and then they get their mind blown when I drop a We Immortals video, and they realize how my message is totally opposite of the data sets I'm publishing. The data sets are necessary, just like you. You came in this conversation for the first 45, 50 minutes basically on a dark plateau that was turning some people off in the comment sections. You understand? People get turned off by listening to negativity, but you were painting a scenario for which was necessary for where the direction of your message was actually going, and that's Archaix as well.
If I didn't believe there was any hope at all, having looked at some of this bleak, dark material that I have, I would probably have taken myself out of here by now. I'd have had
Yeah.
a date with a length of rope by now. I do feel that there's reason for hope and optimism and positivity. And the fact that so many of us now feel that this world is not our home, we don't belong here, we're badly aligned with it, that's where the hope lies. We recognize this place for what it is, and we have no interest in being here any longer. We'll complete these lives, but then when they're done, we don't want to come back. And I don't feel we're going to have to, because I feel that our consciousness is going to be in charge of that decision. And no amount of trickery or deception or duplicity is going to cause the likes of us to come back here under duress. We're going to be capable of making the choice, making a better decision, and transcending this place, whatever it may be. So that is some good news, isn't it? I mean, that
It
has
is
to be
absolutely good news. And I want to add to that. I want to, what you just said could have been said by you in a Greek forum, surrounded by people, mariners coming from the Mediterranean. In the Greek forum, these things were discussed. This is in the forums where everybody came and listened, and there was pedestals, and you get to stand up. And if a crowd of people gravitated you, then more and more people would come, and then you would go daily there, and you would get a name for yourself. These things, these deep things about reality, were known in the Greek forums. Now, later on in Roman times, they kind of had different ways. They did it in amphitheaters, but you don't know if that in the Sumerian Akkadian culture, these same discussions were probably also discussed just 400 and 500 years after the great cataclysm we've come to know in the historical record as the Typhon flood, called in the Bible the biblical flood of Noah. You don't know if we haven't had these conversations in 17th century BC Easter Island, surrounded by these giant heads on this volcano, and people were talking these exact same things. The common denominator with all these ancient civilizations is that they're gone, and almost every one of them were destroyed in some type of devastating event. These devastating events are the harvest when these souls are removed and humanity starts over. What I'm saying is, the very conversation that you and I are having now is because we're heading right toward another systemic reset. Everybody feels it. Governments know it. They're making underground bases in domes and deep earth biospheres. And we all, in the Archaix research, we know 2 back-to-back world-destroying cataclysms are on our horizon. We even know the exact dates. And that's by virtue of a massive amount of chronological and historical data. What I'm saying is the conversation you and I are having now is probably very similar to the conversations that were had right before all these other predecessor civilizations, all the way back to Civilization X, were destroyed. This is why it's so mysterious to us. We are seeing ourselves as separate from the history of our ancestors, but really this is the pattern. This is how souls get out of the construct. You're feeling this way because you're about to be ejected.
right. There was another great movie that came out just recently, actually, called The Life of Chuck. Have you seen that one?
No, I really don't watch a lot of movies. I just don't have time.
Yeah, this is based on an original Stephen King story, and I thought it was a really great movie. It tells the story from the perspective of this guy, Chuck, and it shows you different stages in his life, and it's told in reverse order. And the first storyline, it begins with the end of the universe, the end of this creation. Everything just switches off. All the technology is starting to malfunction, and devices are dying, and the internet goes down, and this all leads up to the end of existence. It just comes to an abrupt end. It just switches off like a light. And then the story goes back in this guy's life, Chuck, and you realize that he's connected with this whole event. It's quite an intricate movie, but it's just interesting that it raises the idea of everything coming to an end and just being turned off. So I wonder if that's what we're heading towards.
Yeah, listen, I'm all for it. I don't feel this is a bad experience. I don't feel it's a dark experience anymore. It's a dark world. It is, to me, we're living in a realm that was created by a demon that popped out of a burning bush. That's the best way I can say it. And even the oldest records that discuss this demon admit that he wasn't just called Yahweh, he had another title called El Shaddai. So when you look up El Shaddai in the Assyrian dictionaries, you find out that one of the worst, most treacherous, murderous demons in all of Assyrian cosmology were called the Shedom, and they were called the Shaddai. So all the Yahweh worshipers did was put the Yahweh God word for God, El, in front of its name, and they made the demon god El Shaddai. So yeah, that's the name of the demiurge. That is the name of the architect of this reality, and that's why it's all murderous. It's all about this entire predator versus prey ecosphere is completely designed off the model of the shedding of blood. Every bit of it.
Right. Well, to that demonic entity, I would thank it for its invitation to come back for another go round, but I'll be politely declining that and taking a one-way ticket instead. Thanks all the same.
Absolutely, man. It's been a great talk, man. You're more than welcome to come back, talk about something else.
We got there in the end. I feel the construct did its best to shut this conversation down, but where there's a strong will, we're just going to keep coming back.
Well, it's not just this today, Mark. We were scheduled 2 weeks ago. We were scheduled 2 weeks ago, and I had I had the time zone wrong, so we kept it on YouTube and rescheduled till today. Rescheduling till today, I had this weird microphone glitch I've never seen before happen to me. Then you disappeared off the deck. I was like, yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, we did get there in the end. And this conversation is one that I'm very glad that it happened, because I think we've been some places, and I hope people have found value in it. And I've definitely appreciated chewing the fat with you and talking about things that most people never seem to talk about. These conversations are hugely valuable. So another great one in the bag there today, brother.
Yeah, awesome. It's awesome. You ever come through Texas, man, let me know. Send me an email, man.
Yeah, I've been all over the United States, but I've never actually been to Texas. So one day I would like to
pass through Texas, man. Dinner's on me. Dinner's on me.
All right. Sounds
all
good.
Right. All right, Mark. So that was great stuff. If I have your YouTube channel in the description box. If you have any other links that you would like to share with my community, man, let me know. Send me an email. I'll put them all in the pinned comment and description box for you.
Sure. Appreciate that. I mean, if people are interested in my work into the music industry, I've got 4 books in my Musical Truth series. They're all on Amazon. And for anyone in America, I would recommend that they get them from Amazon, because it's just such a ball ache to post books out from over here. They go missing and customs seize them and all sorts. But you'll find me on Amazon. I'm on YouTube. And my main website is djmarkdevlin.com. And from there, you've got links through to my various video channels and such.
So, yeah,
I've got a YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel called Mark Devlin God Talks, which is where I've got all 21 of my monologues that I've done so far on these kind of subjects. So people might want to head over there, and they might find some of that content to be of interest.
Wow, that's a lot. I didn't know you had all that. So my mods have been putting a lot of your links in the chat, so they'll stay forever up in the live chat right here too. But if you want to send me an email with your full links, or send it to Big John, and Big John will forward it to me, and I'll put them all in the description box for you.
Sure. Will do, man.
Great
Just
talking.
Looking at the counter on the time counter now, we're heading very rapidly towards 2:16.
Yep.
How could we not?
Well, I think my outro is going to put it in 2:16 because it's 3 minutes long.
Yeah, probably 2:16 exactly.
All right, Mike. Till next time.
All right. Cheers, mate.
He's got good energy, guys. But if we're going to make that 2:16, I'm going to have to go and play this outro right now to see if we can line that up. That's going to be awesome if we can do that. Let's see. All right. Let's see here. Let's try that out right now. Share this video. All right, guys. Our next video is the decode, the breakdown of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You guys knew that was coming. That's in a couple days. And then we've got Jay Weidner. I'm not sure how. You guys know he helped start Gaia. He was originally on Gaia. You know who he is. Anyway, I love you guys.